Hello, and welcome to World History. My name is Mark Langle, and I'll be your instructor for this year's course in World History or AP World History. Generally, at St. Mary's Prep, we teach this course to sophomores, and most of your sons or student learners will be in that situation. I wanted to take just a few moments to introduce myself and talk just a bit about the class World History and or AP World History. So, I am a graduate of the prep class of 2000. This is my 14th year teaching at St. Mary's. So, that brings us to quite a unique situation because of my experience as a student, as an athlete, as a coach, and as a teacher. I'd like to open myself up to be there for the young men of St. Mary's in many capacities. I would love to be someone that they can share experiences with, talk about some of their successes, and of course, I'd like to be open to them if they need help with anything at all. I do teach world history. I also teach the Advanced Placement or AP World History course. And I teach an elective called History by Hollywood, which is reserved for juniors and seniors. I do also serve as the Social Studies Department chair. And as I mentioned, I am an assistant football and track coach. Extracurricular activities are something that I'm also involved in. I'm the co-mentor with Mr. Bobby Klaus for the student group Catholic Athletes for Christ. Next, I'd like to talk about just a few of the things that I would say you can expect from me on a daily basis as the teacher of world history. First off, there will be a history-based lesson or activity every day in my class. Now, there'll be some days where we'll have a review day where we're getting ready for a quiz, but nonetheless, that's still going to be an activity based on world history. And then we'll have quiz days, but once again, those quiz days will be predicated on world history. There really aren't in my class any days that are away from the subject matter for a very long period of time. I would also want to make sure that you can understand that I will be very strict in adherence to the rules and guidelines of St. Mary's Prep. As a former student myself, I really honor and value the traditional disciplinary rules and guidelines that the school sets forward, meaning dress code, proper behavior in class, the small details. I'm a big believer that the small, minute details lead to the big picture in life. Most days, I am a direct lesson or lecture-based instructor. I also try to blend a form of change-up lessons, which would utilize multimedia platforms like this, such as YouTube, Loom, Zoom face-to-face meetings, Google Meets, also Microsoft Teams, which you're going to be using a lot this year in most of your classes, Edpuzzle, Kahoot, you may be familiar with some of these, etc., etc. One of the things I would say is I'm rather old school in my approach to teaching. In my experience at the college level in history-based courses, it is lecture-based, and that is something that if you want to go into the field of history, you're going to have to get used to. A lot of courses at the college level are still lecture-based, unless you're in science or some other subject where it's more lab work. I also make a great effort to incorporate faith-based discussion and relationship to history, and also the development of metacognition is a focal point for me, which in essence is getting students to think about how they think. And basically, before they respond rashly, think about what are those thoughts that are going through their mind, being able to control their thoughts and being able to make great decisions. Moving forward, I would next talk about some of the necessary daily materials that I would expect my students to have on a regular daily basis. The number one thing that they need to get right away is the textbook. It's called World History Patterns of Interaction. That's going to be for both the World History course and also the AP World History course. You will need a class-specific notebook. I would suggest college-ruled. You're going to need a thick notebook. Most of my students go through a 5-subject notebook just for my class every year because pretty much every day we're covering a chapter and a section. So we'll be starting this week, we'll be covering chapter 1, section 1 on Wednesday. Thursday will be chapter 1, section 2. and then Friday would be chapter 1, section 3. So that's going to be 3 separate pages, possibly more, um, for each lesson each day. You also need a dedicated folder for the class, because anything that I hand out, any extracurricular readings that I'll be setting out there, any suggested readings, things of that nature would need to be stored in that folder along with the syllabus and other necessary materials. You're going to need something to write with. I would suggest putting several pencils, pens into your backpack. I would prefer to have something with an eraser. I know they make erasable pens. That would be my preferred choice, because if you make a mistake taking notes, I think it's better to keep it neat and erase and then rewrite rather than scribbling things out all over your page. But hey, that's just me. If you feel more comfortable the other way, that's fine. Number 4 is really important this year, especially. If possible, I will welcome, during times in which I instruct the students to do this, cell phone, tablet, Chromebook, or laptop, or some device with the ability to connect online for research purposes. There's going to be a lot of times where we're going to be doing research online. We're going to be checking out websites, historic materials, primary sources. So those things would come in handy. I can't say that it's going to be used throughout the entire class session, but I know there's going to be some dedicated class sessions where I'm going to ask students if they do have these materials or devices to utilize them. Also, this year, with a lot of uncertainty with the pandemic, I would say it's also necessary to stay prepared and making sure that the format in which I'm delivering material is also accessible for an online study as well. So those are some of the things that I'm working on this year. I've also put out the possibility of maybe making all assignments due on the online submission with the gradebook, and also quizzes may be done online with submission into the gradebook. That's something that would keep down the paper trail back and forth, would also hopefully keep down the transmission of germs and keep my students and myself safe as well. At this time, I'd like to talk about the timeline of coverage. This class, being a world history class, has a really wide scope, so I think it's really important that you understand the nature of what we're going to be covering this year. We're going to start in what's called the Paleolithic Age, which is the Old Stone Age, and this would be the time period prior to 8000 BC, so prior to 8,000 years before the birth of Christ. We'll then move into the Neolithic Revolution, which enters into the New Stone Age, and that comes with the development of farming and other major developments. This begins around 8000 BC, so still, this is where the class begins, right around 8000 BC. Once we get into the Neolithic times, we start to get more advancements into civilized ways of living. Now, the AP version of this course begins in the year 1200 AD, which would be 1200 years after the birth of Christ. But I'm going to still teach information that would take place prior to that time period. There's going to be more information presented about this to the AP students in a later slide. Now, the course will end with what we generally see as the close of World War II. And all in all, we're going to cover over 30 chapters in full. What that generally amounts to each year that I've taught at St. Mary's in my 14 years, there haven't been many that I haven't covered over 1,000 pages of the textbook. So you're definitely going to get your money's worth as long as we have a normal standard year in world history. Now, the final slide is going to be for AP students only and AP families. If you are a world history student, you can go ahead and shut off the video. If you want to stay and listen to and maybe some of the differences of what AP would involve, that's fine as well. If you're an AP student or family, these are some basic bullet points here that I think are really necessary for you to follow along with. Now, advanced placement courses come through the College Board. They're not put on by St. Mary's. There's an overall governing body over these type of classes. In fact, at the end of this year and any year that you take an AP course, there will be a test administered by the College Board, and that could grant you college credit should you pass that examination. However, I will say in my experience that passing that test takes a great deal of commitment, and you have to really be focused throughout the entire school year. What I'm saying to you is that, therefore, This class is going to expect AP students to go above and beyond just what we cover in class. Understand that the exam has over 55 multiple choice questions, about 10 short answer questions, and 3 long essays. So it is a really, really rigorous exam, and you're going to have to be intrinsically motivated to go beyond what we can cover in the 45 minutes a day in class and do the suggested reading, do the extra work that's necessary, do the practice exams, so on and so forth. Understand, this course is technically not traditionally meant for sophomores. Okay, most schools will only have their juniors and seniors take AP courses. So this is something that we do at St. Mary's. We put a lot on our students, but we have to expect that those students are going to be ready for that. So I'm telling you now that this is an intense course. The course will begin in around 1200 AD. So one thing I want to say about that is really important. If we start in 1200 AD, that's 1200 years after the birth of Christ, you're going to miss out on some really important topics such as Mesopotamia, or in other words, the Sumerians, Egypt, Greece, which gave us, the first form of democracy, ancient Rome, which gave us our republic, which this is what the United States practices today. We are a constitutionally limited republic. Places like Persia, of course, the birth and the life of Christ would be left out if you follow the traditional AP scale, and there's a host of other things that get left out of that course. I, as your teacher, don't think that's the best plan. Here's why. A lot of what we're going to be learning about in the modern world history modern, okay, is going to be predicated on what the Greeks, what the Romans established. How can you study democracy, or how can you study a republic as a form of government if you don't understand the foundations, the foundational practices there? So my commitment to you and parents, to your entire family, for your son and your learner, is to cover that material in the best way possible. I'm going to have to move quickly, but I am going to introduce that material because I think it's very valuable to the future education of your son and his understanding of certain values in government, the way that history works, and the way that we got to where we are today. So, therefore, in my closing statement, you're going to be expected to complete a plethora of readings, assignments, and also outside preparation videos, which I will be guiding you to outside of the 45-minute per day class time. So, what that means: homework at night after school, homework, reading on the weekends. These are things that you're going to have to be committed to if you want to get the college credit for passing the AP exam. Thank you for listening to me. I hope that this information was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you all in class and maybe online in Zoom meetings. Should you need me, please feel free to contact me through the school email. Thank you. Have a great night or day.